Welcome to the opening ceremony for our 2024 Women's History Month celebration. The Kimmel Belonging Engagement Hub is pleased to have you join us for this exciting event. My name is Tia Kimbrough, and I'm a graduate assistant for inclusive education. On behalf of our office, we thank you for your presence and engagement today, and we hope that you will enjoy hearing from our keynote speaker. Now, I'd like to introduce our speaker. Mallery Jenna Robinson is an AfraCarribean Binary Transgender woman, as well as a transgender and HIV healthcare advocate for Los Angeles and the state of California. Her role in advocacy began as the engagement specialist and service navigator for the Transgender Health Program, and she's the creator of A Hateful Homicide, which is a true crime and investigative journalism podcast covering hate crimes and hate violence against transgender, non-binary, gender non-conforming, intersex, and two-spirit community members in the United States and abroad. She was originally planned to be here in person, but unfortunately we encountered some logistical issues, so she's now joining us virtually.
Here.
We are very pleased to have her with us today. So without further ado, please join me in welcoming Mallery Jenna Robinson.
Hello, everyone. Thank you, Tia. Thank you, Ashley. Thank you, Southern Illinois University, Edwardsville. Oh my goodness. Hi, thank you for being here. I'm super excited. I'm an honor to share space with you all online, as well as those who were able to come out in person to you. Again, my name is Mallery Jenna Robinson, and my pronouns are she, her, hers. I am here today as your keynote speaker to really tell you a little bit about my journey coming from Montgomery, Alabama, and then now living in Los Angeles, California. I'm going to take you through, my upbringing, a little bit about my gender journey, beginning as a sophomore in high school as an Afra-Carribean trans woman, navigating my journey all the way through college, and then also openly teaching as a trans teacher from 2014 to 2019. So this was before, as some of you all know, before the Don't Say Gay, all these other bathroom bans and measures that have been put in place. So I'm going to share a little bit about that, and then conclude with how I landed in Los Angeles. So we're going to go through this chronological timeline. About 45 minutes of your time today, and then we'll leave a little room for Q&A. I always welcome those. And then I also have some resources I'm going to take time to share with you all as well. So again, thank you for being here. And I'm going to start with my childhood. Again, I was born in Montgomery, Alabama on January 13th of 1990. Fun fact, my mom told me that they told her I was going to be born on January 13th. So I was like, she's like, yeah, you've always been punctual. You say on time you meet it. So you came on your due date. And then, but what was really interesting about that though is that I came from a mom who was a teen mom. She was 18. She was a senior in high school. Her and my biological dad met in high school, but kind of didn't really take off. She wasn't in love with him. She was in like with him. So the relationship ended. But unfortunately, my biological father did battle with drug use and abuse, crack cocaine. So when I was 6 months old, he wasn't in my life. And so I grew up with my mom, and then I have 4 brothers, 1 older and 3 younger. I didn't grow up with my second dad, and he's my adoptive dad, and he's the father of my brothers. And so I didn't know growing up, you all, that my dad who adopted me wasn't my biological dad. All the way down, it was interesting. When I look back, and every time I talk about this, it was interesting because my family had this so methodically planned out that my former name before Mallery, there was an uncle on my adoptive dad's side who had that same name, and they were like, "Oh, that's who you were named after." Even though but later find out that I was named after my biological dad at the time. So but it was just you look back at life and you they were really elaborate on that. But my adoptive dad and mom ultimately ended. And so I grew up essentially in a single parent household with my mom. And one of the things that I learned growing up was hard work, tenacity, effort, repetition. Anything that you do when it comes to hard work, always be willing to put time into it. Again, that effort and repetition. And that's what I've pretty much done all my life. I knew early on, by the time I was in kindergarten, that would have been circa 1995. I can recall getting ready to start kindergarten, and then I went to school. And before, let me go back for a moment. I was getting ready to start school, and I recall telling my mom that I was a little girl. And to my surprise, she was like, "Absolutely, you are." She even told me that when she was pregnant with me, that she thought she was carrying a little girl. So I was like, so I guess she like just always still held on to that, and having four brothers. And so she's like, "Yes, of course you are." So we go up to the school in Montgomery, Alabama in 1995. This would have been like the Clinton era. And I go in there, and they pretty much essentially told us no, that was not going to be possible. That was not going to be allowed. It would confuse the kids. And it's interesting, fast forward 30 years later, that's still been the same narrative. But again, someone like myself who's a trans youth, as early as 5, it just was like, I just want to live in my truth. I just want to be able to go to school and play with kids. And like, if my mom's okay with my truth and she's affirming me going to school, why is it bothering others? And again, that would get me into the advocacy work that I do in later years. But I recall that moment in my life, you all, at the age of 5, and it hurt like hell. I'm not gonna lie. It was what we call in the community what's known as gender dysphoria. So when you pretty much realize that your body isn't aligning with your internal truth, who you know that you are supposed to be reflected. And that was the first time where I was like, okay, now I have to go to school with all these kids. And as you all know, schools can be very binary structures. So I would go and be placed in the line with the little boys. And I've always been very feminine. My voice always been very soft. It was interesting before we started the call today. Ashley and Tia was like, if you could speak a little, I was like, I know it's always been so soft. um, and so those mannerisms through life did rough some of my, and I come from a Haitian background through my mom's side. And then through my father's side, Ugandan and Liberian. And so, these are very masculine dominated upbringings. And so I could recall, like, being very feminine, walking around the home. And while my mom has always been very supportive, but I could recall, like, my, older brother being like, "No, you can't do that. Kids are going to make fun of you." Um, and so then again, just always kind of being reminded that, like, don't do too much, like, okay, you can play around the house we can get you some dolls and but then like outside. And so that was like one of the first times early in my youth where it was like, okay, there was like this sense of shame. And I kept, I went on through school for the next 10 years, and I fast forward to high school. So my very freshman year of high school, I was at this point out openly as at this time, cisgendered, queer, assigned male at birth individual. So I am coming in, and 14 years old. This would have been the Taylor Swift era, like 15, like honestly, I was a total Swiftie. And I meet this guy, and I want to share this with y'all because it's just part of the book that I'm working on. It's part of, and so kind of giving you a little insight into just things that we all have had to overcome. And I appreciate you all for being here with me and letting me be vulnerable in this space, and hopefully empower as well after I'm done. But my very first boyfriend in high school. So I got like a little between 2002 to 2004. I was age 12 in 2002. I had my very first kiss, you all, with the guy who was my very first crush in school in second grade. His name was Jonathan Trace Bishop, like a total redhead with freckles. And I was just like, and like in middle school, he becomes my first kiss. So I'm like, okay, hey, like feeling empowered. And then also for those who have been, put into spaces, especially as young folks, especially like young Black and brown and queer and trans folks, like sexuality is like such a thing that's like over sexualized in our community. So I can even remember as young as 13 being vulnerable enough to like have sex for the first time. And so that was like all these things are happening for me at a very young age. And folks be like, "Oh, like were you?" And I'm like, yeah, it was very confusing. A lot of it was just the guys that were interested, like my first crush and like that guy, they were just very like forward and dominating. I'm gonna get to 2004. again, going back into high school where I did met another dominant force. He was my first boyfriend. He was the lead singer of a rock band, and his name was Justin. And so Justin and I would date for a year and a half. And when we dated for a year and a half, this was the first time, y'all. Now my mom has been super supportive from the very beginning. My maternal grandfather walked with Malcolm X in the Black Panther movement. My maternal great grandmother, which is my mom's mom's, she walked with Rosa Parks in Selma with Martin Luther King. So I come from this very civil rights, like outspoken family. So I've always been very outspoken. But when I got with Justin, I found myself like losing a lot of my voice again. And it took me back to when I was like younger. My very first time, and this is something I feel like that's not very talked about, especially for my queer men, cis or trans, or even our non-binary masculine folks, intimate partner violence, and at that time what's known as same-sex relationships, as it was coined at that time, and still sometimes in certain cultures and places. I, went through this honeymoon phase with Justin. He was 16, I was 14. He was a cisgendered white guy, and he seemed so sweet at first, but I can recall, so interesting folks say, listen to your mother, because I can recall like taking him to meet my family. And my mom and even my adopted dad, even though they weren't together anymore, my adopted dad wanted to meet him because he was also supportive as well. And Justin talks about force fields and that we're meant to be because of these cosmic galaxies. And like when he left, my parents was like, run, stay away from this kid. You are not allowed to date him. So, it's like that angsty. I was like very kind of punk rocky emo. So I was like, no, I'm going to like sneak out the window and like be together forever. So then like we were kind of like doing that because he realized like my parents didn't like him. And once I turned 15, I got my driver's permit. So I started driving. And that's where the first time I started to kind of notice some red flags with Justin, beyond the galaxies and the cosmos. I thought it was so sweet at 14. I was like, oh my God, you guys just like to infinity and beyond. Like I'm very like Buzz Lightyear channeling my millennial and like, yes, okay. But then looking at how intense it was, the phone calls, it just got very, very intense. One example I'll give you is the way my classroom is set up. It's almost kind of slightly similar setup to SIU, except those red walls over there, they would be almost like glass walls, so you can see in between the classrooms. And my very first red flag with Justin was I was taking intro Spanish, and one of my partners in Spanish was just talking to me in the classroom, and Justin saw it and like banged on the window, tells me to come out, slams me against the wall, and was like, what was that? What are you doing? Trigger warning, excuse me, I don't mean to overwhelm anyone as well, but this is it's so important for us to talk about this. It's like feminine folks, it's queer folks, it's trans folks, because it gets swept under the rug far too often. And I think people need to understand that it's been happening a lot longer than just, this generation. It's been happening even before. So this person pushes me against the wall. He, yells at me, calls me names. The guidance counselor walks by and says nothing. Not, Justin, what are you doing to Mallery? What's going on? My teacher as well. My Spanish teacher didn't come out and say anything. Looking back now at 34, that 14-year-old, I could have tried to get away and went back into the classroom, or not even had went out. But this was someone who at this point I had been dating for about 6 months. So I felt, safe enough to just go out the classroom for a moment and talk with him, never thinking it was going to lead to being shoved. Following that summer of 2005, and again, he the lead singer and guitarist of a band, so he would always want me to go to his band practice. And this one day, again, we're sneaking. At this point, the relationship is like very secretive, so I don't have anyone to talk to about this except like one really close friend since kindergarten, about like his anger, him calling a lot, waiting by my classroom door. And so I'm kind of like internalizing this. I didn't really feel supported with my school. And I think it was just kind of one of those things because from the South, if you know anything about the South, it's like, you keep that, and, behind closed doors, you kind of sweep it under the rug. You just out of sight, out of mind. You don't talk about those things. And then especially when you look at intersectionalities, like me being a Black queer youth and him being a white queer youth, it was just, it was just so many just dynamics and intersex that just there was no support at that time. And I recall my mom, because it was the summer of 2005, my mom was like at work or something, and my brothers were all at like camp. So I was kind of at home by myself. And I remember he was like calling me and he was like, hey, like I gotta get to band practice. So I'm like, trying to rush and get ready. And I will admit you all, like, it takes me forever to get ready. Like, I'm such a girly girl, like very Woozy. I'm like, okay, so I gotta do my hair first. And then like I gotta do my makeup. And then like I may have to go back and do something else to my hair. So like I was like even at that particular at 14. So like certain situations haven't changed. And that annoyed him. And so then I finally get out to the car and I can remember, him just yelling and being like, what was taking you so long? And I was kind of like not paying too much attention, but I pulled down the visor to like, continue to like check my makeup and everything. And so I remember he like slams the visor like shut. And he's like, do you hear me? Do you hear that I'm talking to you? And I was like, Justin, like stop, like I'm just getting ready. We're about to go. So then I pulled the visor back down. He starts to drive and we get to the stop sign and we still haven't left out of my neighborhood yet. So we get to the stop sign. And I remember like I'm like very like la da 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 da, like just like we're going to band practice, and not thinking what was about to happen. And I remember he stopped and he like sat there for a moment. And I'm like kind of just like looking in the mirror, and then all of a sudden it's like this pow slap of the backhand to my face. And I'm sitting here like mouth drops, you all. Like I was very shocked. This was the first time where I had dealt with being physically abused. I wasn't used to that. I didn't grow up. My mom's always been she's a Caribbean woman. So she grew up very strong, single-minded. She got rid of my biological dad when he wasn't stepping up to the plate. She got rid of my adopted dad when he was, so, I come from like, no nonsense. But this was the first time when I was kind of like, I love this person. He just hit me. I don't know what's going on. I don't know why, but maybe I did something and he needs help, and let me figure out how I can help him. That was where, like, as my mouth is dropping, that's where my mind was going to. But then all of a sudden, he's still yelling. He's like, when I tell you to get out of the house, you get out and don't make me late. And you fucking stupid. And so I'm just like still just shocked. And he's still at the stop sign. And fortunately, I don't think there was anyone behind us. But I remember it seemed like what took 5 minutes. Maybe it was just only a minute, but I can't then remember him like saying, I'm so sorry. Like, I just want you to like listen to me. My band career is important for me, which is going to be important for you, because he was thinking he's going to be like the next Lincoln Park. So I just remember in that moment, that was the first time where I was like, oh, I really need to change my behavior again, like I had to do in elementary school, like I had to do in the playground. Another male authority figure, teacher, brother, people telling me like how to conduct myself. So I fell into line and I went through that for a year and a half. Finally, I had the gumption to get out of it when I turned 16. I knew it was kind of like now or never in so many ways. At this point, I'm still dating him as from summer 2005 to now it's 2006. He slapped me. He, still was a little aggressive throughout those months. But the final straw was when I had turned 16. And like so many of us as intimate partner violence survivors, you start to gain a little bit of independence. And so I had got my first job, and my mom had, worked 2 jobs to get me a car, and which was like really rare for like someone like me growing up in a trailer park with, my mom and my 4 brothers. So it was like very limited means. So it meant a lot to me. And Justin hated that. And so my very first job, I was working at a place called Moe's Southwest Grill out of Montgomery, Alabama. And the same friend who was my Spanish partner, which got Justin upset about a year before, had ended up coming up to my job and was just like, "Hey, like, congratulations on your new job." Justin comes up to the job to want to see what I was doing. And he sees Jonathan talking to me and comes inside of the restaurant, is busy. This is my first time ever working. Um, and he goes off. He starts yelling at Jonathan. He starts yelling at me. My supervisor at the time says, "Hey, you need to go." He like tries to fight my supervisor. I almost lost my job. It was so humiliating. And that's when I knew that I was like, this isn't safe for me. And I still had no one to really talk to, but I would tell my best friend who, I've had known since kindergarten. Her name's Miracle. Excuse me. And I would talk to her and tell her bits and pieces. And one of the things that we always say in the South and probably in the Midwest and some cultures too, you all probably hear this a lot, but pray about it. That was kind of the the advice that she would give me. So I'm like, okay, I guess my prayer needs to be for me to get the strength and the sanity to get out of this because I don't feel safe anymore. And so I did. And that was the first time when I knew it was time for me to find my voice again after I got out of that relationship in March of 2006. The following month, in April of 2006, on April 28th, I was feeling very self-harmful. And I was really struggling with finding my voice regarding my gender identity. And one of my good friends who I had met freshman year of high school, his name's Carlin. He's an incredible Black queer man, educator in Alabama. Now he is. And I remember just being very vulnerable and raw. And I was like, I don't know how much longer I can live. I was like, I got to be in my truth. I had remember once like bringing it up to Justin when we dated, and he just kind of laughed about it and was like, don't be ridiculous. Like, no one's gonna want to date someone who's transgender, and that's just not how the world works. So I just remember all those things were kind of playing in my mind. I was like, but I know that I'm a girl. I know that I'm a woman. I'm a young woman. I know this is my truth, and I can't keep hiding it. And so finally, he said, "Mallory, let's go to the guidance counselor." So this was the first time where that same guidance counselor who had walked past me when Justin pushed me to the wall, I was kind of like, I don't know, let's see. So I went to Ms. White's office, and to my surprise, she was very supportive and empathetic. She called my mom. My mom comes to the school, and I was like, "Mommy, I gotta live my truth. I have to. It's really now or never." So then she told the school that my child in 2006, this is the now George W. Bush era. So keep in mind, at this point, we're like several years into the Iraq war. My oldest brother is going into the Navy at this time to fight in the war, which was already scaring my mom and myself and others. But then also that was kind of like almost the expectation for myself too, which was never going to happen. I was like, there's no way I'm going to like put on a uniform and love all of our armed forces people, of course, and community members. But I was like, I was like, I'm a little too dainty for that. I was like, I could hardly even handle PE, let alone trying to like climb up things and stuff. And I remember one time trying to do softball and the ball hit my little pinky, and I was like, that's it. Nope, never playing the sport again. So I knew as I was getting older and my body was starting to change as well, now that I'm in my teen years. So I'm starting to get a little bit more like hormones in my body. And that's even increasing my gender dysphoria. So that's when I knew it was important for me to just, say something. And my mom, spoke to the school. The school was actually supportive, very supportive. My classmates in high school, I went to a technology magnet high school where you had to have a 3.5 grade point average or higher in order to attend. And so I think to that extent, I'm very thankful looking back at it, because if I would have been in a general public school, which is where I would have been zoned for, had it not been for this magnet school, I don't know what my classroom environment would have looked like. And a lot of my classmates were very much like good old boys, like very like country, like cowboys. And so they all, along with me, were learning my gender identity and gender truth. Teachers had to learn how to go from calling me Jay to Mallery. Students had to also learn that. This was very nuanced when we were talking about restrooms. Where do I go? So the one of the things that I super am thankful for my mother, because she was like, I do not want my child to feel other when it comes to the restroom. So there needs to be at least 10 to 15 minutes of time for her to be able to go into the girls' restroom, close it off for her if the other students are uncomfortable being in the bathroom with her. At least give her some time to have that. And the school was very, I don't, maybe it was just kind of, we were getting into like a little different generation and stuff, but they were just like really going along with a lot of this. And it wasn't, and I'll kind of tell you like the flip side to that in a moment. But again, the school was very supportive. My classmates were very supportive. They actually got me a date for prom. I was voted most friendly in high school. And then I even went on to take my senior picture as all female. So you can see that from class of 2008. Thank you, Amanda. I see you. Thank you. And that is, a little bit about like my early years, especially when it comes to like me getting into my gender journey. Once I started my truth completely in 2006, I never looked back. And then I went on and graduated, and then went on to receive my double bachelor's in biology and history over at Huntington College, which is my alma mater. And once I finished graduating in 2014, I then went on to move to Jacksonville, Florida. And that's when I got into teaching. At this point, between 2008, 2014, when I graduated, to give you like a couple of little additional things to share. The school, once I graduated in 2008, they put in into their school code of conduct that you had to go to school and attend as your assigned sex at birth. So yeah, so even though like they had kept those policies in place for me, once I had graduated, they were, and at this point that we now have a new principal who was very different than the principal that I had. So we have a new principal who's in, and he was another man. The principal before was a female, but a cis woman, but this was a cis man. So he was very old school, military, and was just like, yeah, no, like once she graduates. And so I remember there was a trans student who was class of 2010. And I remember them saying like, Mallery, it was really inspiring to see you. And when you graduated, I thought I would be able to be in my truth as a trans person. But then when they put those policies and procedures in the code of conduct, you really, again, saw how as much as affirmed as I was, there were still other powers at play that didn't want to see other people have that opportunity, which again is what led me into advocacy work. And I did also get diagnosed while in my college years in 2011 is when I officially began my medical transition in terms of hormone replacement therapy. But I also then got diagnosed with HIV. So I've been living undetectable with HIV since May of 2011. I was still about 2.5 years away from graduating with my double BA. So just to kind of give you a little couple of things in between that 2008 to 2014 timeline. But I want to be like cognizant of everyone's time and make sure we keep the conversation going and get into the next phase of my life, which was for me, which was very important, which was teaching. So I found myself very empowered, you all. I told every school that I ever taught at, I am a trans teacher. I am someone who does identify as a trans woman. I'm very open and proud of my truth. At this point, by 2014, I would have been 8 years into my gender journey completely, even though like I still like to consider 1995 really. Like I'm like, well, really, probably a little longer. In terms like that, officially, like no turning back. And so 8 years at this point, and every school, Jacksonville, Florida, if you know anywhere about that geographically, it's kind of adjacent to Southern Georgia. So it's like North Florida, Southern Georgia area. So there's not much of a distinction between the two in terms of politics and conservatism. But The parents were, for the most part, very affirming. Fun fact, I actually have several students who have come out as trans since I left Florida in 2019 to move to Los Angeles. But while I was getting ready to start my first year teaching, I had met my husband. And so I got legally married in 2017, but I had met my husband named Daniel in 2014, like right after I had moved to Jacksonville. Before I got into teaching, before the school year started, I was working at like a call center, and he was working there. And I remember I was like super excited. I was telling my coworker, I was like, "Oh my gosh, like I'm getting ready to start teaching, and this is my first year. And I just graduated from college, and I'm moving out of my home state for the first time of Montgomery, Alabama, and making my way. Just being independent, like the way Mama raised me. Go out there and live your best life. Don't let anything or anyone hold you back." So I was doing that, super excited. And then this like nerdy cisgendered guy like slides his chair back, and he's like, "Oh yeah, like I taught English in Taiwan." And I was like, thinking to myself, like, "Well, I didn't ask you, I was like, I was talking to my friend, but okay." And so at this point, I'm still trying to figure out how to navigate a healthy relationship. Justin was really toxic and abusive, which once I told my family about that when I went off to college, it was really healing for me. I had dated a little bit in between since Justin. There was a relationship prior to my husband, and that was actually one of the relationships too that kind of helped prompt me to Florida, but it didn't work out. And I still was like, I don't care. I'm going to still live in Florida anyway because I'm near the beach and I am here to teach. So I kept going. So I was still a little like, when it came to like dating by this point. I was like, I don't know. I was like, I'm kind of like not really good at this. I don't have the best judge of character. But I really just, wanted to trust the process. And so then, like, we got married in 2017. And then on Valentine's Day of 2018, because my husband's in the Navy, and he was stationed in Jacksonville at the time, which is how I had met him. And so he was gone for Valentine's Day, and then he came home, and he was very distraught, you all. And I remember trying to figure out what's going on, because he knew I was a trans woman. He knew I lived undetectable with HIV. Now, granted, his family didn't know, and that was again looking back at men. The men in my life, let me rephrase that, not men. The men in my life were controlling me. So he was like, "Yeah, like we can be together and get married, but like they can't know you're trans." And so, but I think for me at that time, I was so still kind of a little raw and desperate for like love and attention. I just accepted that as a term. But we got married, and then on Valentine's Day, he comes home, and then he's very emotional and tells me that he had an affair. That he had an affair with a cis woman who was actually a friend of his Navy crew member's wife. I guess is the best way to put it. Excuse me. And it was jaw dropping. This was the first time where, and this wasn't the first relationship that I had navigated with infidelity, but it was the first time where I was like legally married to someone, and that was just that itself is already like a commitment. But then it's not easy to get out of something. It's like when you date, right? I'm like, okay, like it didn't work. But when you like it, it's like, okay, I really have to think about what I'm going to do here. And that's where I was at. I was very shocked to get that news on Valentine's Day. And then what kind of interesting enough led me to California was to work on saving our marriage at that time. We came to Los Angeles in March of 2018. So he apologized, and we went to therapy. I was, at this point I had gotten married in April of 2017. So I was only like married for 10 months. And I was like, okay, like, I want to do my part as just in this space to try to like at least give it a fair chance. We're all human. And I guess I was that most friendly of me being voted most friendly. So I've always just tried to see the good in everyone and never want to think that people are intentionally malicious. Like we all just have stuff that happens, and sometimes it gets trickled on to other people, and it's not sometimes intentional. So I was trying to like kind of go into that, giving grace, learning my therapy skills, right, from all of the relationships and stuff. But then I found out that unfortunately the affair was still going on. So then I had to learn to love myself. So in 2019, which was my last year of teaching, and I will tell you all one of the things. This is a like just rule of like an advice, and you all probably already practice this if you have not. But every time I've dealt with intimate partner violence, been constricted and conformed into like my gender identity, anytime I've had to deal with my depression, what has always helped me is those happy moments in life. And when I tell you my students, my last year of teaching from 2018 to 2019 was so helpful for me. They would be so silly and facetious and just like always, keep me engaged. And so I'm going through this divorce at this time because I had made the decision that because my husband had he didn't want the marriage to end because of the implements of him being in the Navy and get in trouble. So his proposal was an open marriage. And for me, that was like not what was going to happen. So I chose me. And I can recall, I was also in like my weight loss journey too, because I've also struggled with anorexia nervosa. And so I can recall like at this point, I'm like in a really different space in my body journey. And I felt so empowered to like walk up the stairs to that fourth floor in that courthouse and do that to go and file for divorce. It was really interesting because I remember in between that time, as well as going officially to file for divorce, which it took me about 6 to 7 months to gain the strength to do. Um, that once I did it, because he was telling folks he had already filed for divorce and all that stuff. So then once I go up there, they were like, yeah, no, actually, he hasn't done anything. And I was like, yeah, I kind of figured. So, but I want to let you all know this when I was going through my divorce journey, and it was hard. I had to learn to love myself again at this point as well. I'm about 2 years into my post-operative journey as well. I had my gender affirming surgery in 2016 with Dr. Harold Reed at my bottom surgery. So I had that just 1 year prior to getting married to him. So I'm like coming into my new body. I'm loving myself. I'm deciding, you know what? It's time for me to get out of Florida. So what I did was I filed for divorce and then I moved to Los Angeles, California. Now, one of the things that I wanted to circle back to is my biological dad. I mentioned to you all earlier that he became addicted to crack cocaine and was out of my life from the time I was 6 months until I was 19. So when he met me again as Mallery, he hadn't seen me since I was like a little knee-high baby. And he's like, if you know anything about the rapper Ice Cube, like he's one of those like old school, like 80s, like kind of like gangster with it. So I was kind of worried about how he was going to feel about me being trans. And then also learning that I'm his only child. But to you all, I want to share like a happy moment that he was actually really supportive and really uplifting. And for the past 15 years, he's been clean and sober, and we've had an incredible father-daughter relationship. So one of the things I want to do and to shift gears for a moment is share that with you all. Hopefully you can see it here, but I want you to hear some words from my daddy-o.
Continue to bless her, and she just continue to stay focused on what she's got to do for her in life. Thank you.
Thank you, Dan.
I am so grateful and thankful for my daughter. You know what I'm saying? That the things that she's accomplished in her life and the things that she's continuing to do. Only God knows the limits that she's beyond limits. I mean, there's really no limits of the things that she can do, and God is blessing her, and then I want him to continue to bless her, and she just continue to stay focused on what she's got to do for her in life. Thank you.
Thank you, Dan.
I am so grateful and thankful for my daughter.
Take a moment, you all, and just share that with you that, again, coming from Montgomery, Alabama, people can surprise you. I hope you're able to hear the sound. But I've been very incredibly thankful to now have a supportive mom and two dads. And so when I was going through my divorce, my dad helped me move here to Los Angeles, California, which is where I'm at now. And one of the things I remember that helped me just get through everything that I was going through was the words that they told me, which was like, you are resilient and remarkable, and don't let anyone, any relationship define you. And so I chose myself. I chose to love myself, re-love myself, discover myself. And that was one of the reasons why I moved to Los Angeles, California for that fresh start, for a new beginning. Now, I had no idea when I left teaching you all that moving to Los Angeles, California, where it was going to take me. I had always known, like since I was a kid, that I had always had this like love for California. And I can even remember my classmates in high school, they was like, Mallery, where are you from? And I was like, I'm from Montgomery, Alabama. And it was like, no, we know you're from here. Like you live here, but like, where are you from? Like you sound like you're from the valley. And at the time, there was a show called Laguna Beach and the hills. And so like, I remember my friends and I in high school would always talk about it, like Lauren and all that. And so once I moved to California, folks was like, yeah, you totally belong here. Like you definitely have like that LA vibe, which is really good because people in LA can surprise you too, everyone. So though I know you, just in case if you have that, like everyone's not all like they're too good to talk to people. People will surprise you, just like they did in Montgomery, Alabama, and just like my teacher friends and my principals surprised me in Jacksonville, Florida. So now, you all, I'm getting over to Los Angeles, California. It's the summer of 2019. I'm still going through my divorce at this time. I didn't get divorced until right before the pandemic began in March of 2020. So I kind of like dodged that right before because I was like, can you imagine me trying to get everything changed after, which was a whole nother thing and another conversation for another time. But when I moved here, I remember there was this job posting at the center in Long Beach, and it was for their Transgender Health Program. And for the first time at this point, you all, I've been on my hormone replacement therapy. I'm on my antiretrovirals for my HIV. I've undergone, several gender affirming surgeries. So I feel like at this point, I've had this lived experience of like, okay, but this is the old saying, you want to talk about it, be about it. So when I saw this job opportunity where they were looking for a transgender healthcare advocate, I was like, well, I'm trans. And I love teaching, but I was kind of like, I guess that little teaching bug had kind of worn off. So I was like, well, what's next for me? I'm newly, single and going through a divorce. And I was like, I think I want to do something that channels my truth. And I was like, they actually have jobs for folks to care for the trans community, because coming from Montgomery, Alabama, and coming from Florida, there's still not a lot of resources to this day. So I was very impressed and very thankful. So I get into the role at the center. I get hired on. One of my really good friends, love him to death. He was one of the determining factors for me getting the job. And as you heard Tia introduce me, several programs were created. But unfortunately, in that workspace, I did not feel myself being validated coming in as a Black trans woman. And this is one of the things that I've learned with growing up in the South and coming from a very activist family background to then moving to Los Angeles, California, where again, it is a beautiful space. It's a beautiful city. But one of the things that my friend Otis, who helped me get the job at the center at the time, he's from Texas. And he says, Mallery, he said, when I grew up in Texas, he said, I was always reminded that I was gay. He said, but now that I live in LA, I'm always reminded that I'm Black. And that was the first time for me. And it's so interesting when I tell folks this, they're like, oh, you didn't get the racism as much in this. I said, no. I said, and I think to all the civil rights leaders, not only in my family, but all the other beautiful, incredible leaders and families who have spoken up. So I think by the time I grew up in that millennial generation, it has been different. Still a lot of work to be done, of course, but definitely I never felt like I was being treated differently, at least not directly towards my face. Now, certainly I didn't feel supported when I was going through intimate partner violence as a youth, but in terms of like my skin tone, but to move to California and then to get into a work environment where I could see that was going to be an issue, especially for the supervisor that I had at the time. And he was a cisgender Latino male. And so I remember one of the things that stuck with me was he said, yeah, you country folks, y'all should you say the word strawberry kind of funny. And I was like taken aback. I was like aghast at you. I was like, how dare you? Because you're actually really saying that Southern people, you're making fun of like how we talk, which is a culture. And just like whether you have like a Boston, Massachusetts accent or New York accent, like we all show up differently. And that's when I knew that this wasn't going to be a really good workspace for me. And this was also another individual who was trying to kind of like tell me how to run a trans health program for trans folks. And he was not. So that is when I got into my own business, which is known as Transgender Excellence Academy. And like you heard Tia and Ashley mention, I have my true crime and investigative journalism podcast, A Hateful Homicide. It is the only podcast of its kind that's dedicated to the hate crimes and violence of our trans community, non-binary, nonconforming, intersex, and two-spirit community members. How this came to be was when, as I was doing the advocacy work at the center, I recall a lot of my beautiful clients and patients and community members would be like, Miss Mallery, girl, I'm so tired of seeing the media saying, you know, trans woman found murdered because she didn't tell the truth, or man dressed as woman, or this, you know, all this misgendering, blaming the victim, dead naming. And so when she said that, she's like, you know, Dateline covers who they want to cover. 48 Hours covers who they want to cover. Why doesn't anyone ever care about our truth? They just want to see us as these villains and these, you know, bathroom bandits and et cetera. And all of that started to pull at my heartstrings, you all. And I had to think to myself, I was like, growing up where I grew up at, and especially covering the cases that I've covered, some of them have been youth, like Next Benedict, as you all may have heard of, who actually was born the same year that I graduated high school and was also the same age when I began my gender journey. So I feel the impact all around. And I think to myself, like being 16 at the time, what if one of my classmates would have wanted to silence me? It's so unfathomable, unthinkable to think that someone would want to hurt you and take your life. It's for being yourself, but these things are real. And then unfortunately we get blamed for why, for our own deaths. So that is where A Hateful Homicide came in at. And what I'm going to do as well, you all, is share A Hateful Homicide. So this is the website here, y'all, if you can see it. And again, it was created in 2021 on Trans Day of Visibility, March 31st. Again, the mission statement is to assure all trans victims have a voice by assuring accurate, adequate, and affirming case coverage. And of course, our vision is to continue to raise awareness and advocacy surrounding the community. These are some of our beautiful victims here that you can see from season 4. We are available on Amazon Music, Audible, iHeartRadio, YouTube, etc. So again, I'm so thankful to have partnered with Darkcast Network. We're actually going to the Oxygen Network's Crime Con in May as well. And then we've also started to do some listening sessions with different partners to continue to raise awareness pertaining to our beautiful trans community. And then also with getting into transgender healthcare and advocacy, and one of the things that was shared as well was the fact that our community members were not being really well received in the medical space. Unfortunately, you all, we get very much limited access to healthcare, as you can probably know in the media, from like gender affirming healthcare being banned, even adult healthcare being banned, even for those who are living with HIV, Brian White coverage, all of these things are being impacted. And so one of my goals is with Transgender Empathy Trainings is to go around from educational spaces to healthcare organizations and provide empathetic approaches and trainings on how your organization can be more affirming. I'm happy to announce that we've been at the National Latinx Conference, the Black Trans Advocacy Conference, the Gilead Conference, and so many more. So you can kind of see here, there's a video of me getting ready to do the presentation. So I please encourage each and every one of you, if you want to learn how to be more affirming in your space and have it welcome, please feel free to reach out to me. A Hateful Homicide, as we slowly start getting ready to wrap up, I wanted to take a moment and just share a little bit of A Hateful Homicide, not the full episode, but just to give you an idea of the intro. And please, please, please subscribe, take a listen, share. The goal is definitely for making sure that our victims get a voice. So I strongly, strongly encourage you to just, give it a listen. And so I just wanted to take a moment and share a little bit about A Hateful Homicide. As you can see, we're in season 5. We're on YouTube now. So I'm super thankful for the growth and love of the community and communities like you all who are willing to be here and listen and learn more about the beautiful victims and also ways how you can be affirming. So I'll take a moment and share just a little bit of A Hateful Homicide. Hi, my name is Mallery Jenna Robinson. Join me on A Hateful Homicide, a true crime and investigative journalism podcast dedicated to telling the stories regarding the murders of our transgender, gender non-binary, intersex, and two-spirit community members in the United States and abroad. This is A Hateful Homicide. What's your emergency? An arrest in the death of a transgender woman.
When we talk about the LGBT community's marginalization, trans women of color specifically experience the most violence.
The victims are real and their voices matter. This is A Hateful Homicide. The murder of Julie Doe. Introducing the Trans Doe Network. Sunday, September 25th, 1988, Claremont, Florida. Warning, the following content may contain evidence of misgendering. Discretion is advised.
It's a cold case 35 years old. A body found on the side of the road in rural Lake County.
To this day, detectives still haven't figured out the identity, but as West 2's Haley Krubelholm explains, technology recently uncovered a twist in this mystery.
Awfully hard to solve a murder if the victim.
In September of 1988, a man looking for cypress wood in rural Claremont, practically to the Polk County line, found a body.
This female had been dragged from the road about 30 feet into the bushes. Indicates, some sort of concealment, which usually is indicative of a homicide of some type.
Detective Daniel Conley with the Lake County Sheriff's Office came out of retirement to join their cold case unit in 2019. He hadn't joined the department by 1988, but he says back then, detectives talked to people in the area and tried to match the body to missing persons reports. They got nothing.
Nothing seemed to pan out, and the case went cold after a while.
With no name, they decided to call her Julie Doe. She was anywhere from 24 to 33. She had strawberry blonde hair with brown roots, well-manicured nails, and signs of a nose job and breast implants. She was wearing an acid-wash jean skirt and a blue and green tank top. They believe the body could have been there a few days or weeks. To put together a sketch of what she might have looked like, they turned to a detective with the Orange County Sheriff's Office.
I did sketches for Chicago PD, Honolulu PD, New York.
Detective Stephen Fusco is retired now, but in his career, he did thousands of sketches.
As a forensic artist, we're looking for, clues.
Looking at the person's clothing and things found at the scene, he would work to put together what that person might have looked like when they were alive. Fusco's sketch was released, but no one came forward to identify her. A lab studied the remains and submitted her DNA to National Missing and Unidentified Persons Database. According to a timeline from the Sheriff's Office, progress on the case pretty much came to a halt in 1989, but picked up again in 2010, when new DNA samples were submitted to a university in Texas. And 5 years later, the medical examiner's office received a new report from a lab at a Florida university. The results were completely unexpected.
Julie Doe was actually born as a male based on the chromosomes.
And Conley says an isotope analysis revealed Julie Doe likely spent most of her life in the Kissimmee River area, probably Polk County down to Monroe County. Over the years, they've entered her DNA and dental records to more databases with no hits. So now they've turned to the DNA Doe Project,
which is a nonprofit that helps investigators conduct studies, mainly genealogical studies.
Using Julie Doe's DNA and comparing it to DNA submitted by other people, they work to find people related to her, however distant, crafting a family tree. Right now, Conley says they have thousands and thousands of potential family hits to sift through.
Not all of them are out. Of course, there has to be branches of family trees, constructing that as we speak.
He says if they can figure out
Hello, everyone. Thank you, thank you, thank you. So I wanted to take a moment and share a little bit again with A Hateful Homicide. That is one example of one of the many cases. Julie Doe, this is why I do this. It's interesting. And I'm sure a lot of you have heard of callings, surviving everything that I've survived. Coming here to Los Angeles, I had no idea what I was getting into, but the work that I'm doing, I can't stop. I have to give each of these victims a voice. Julie, we still don't even know who she is. And so many others. And so I thank you all for being here to take the time to learn. I thank my mom, Therese. I thank my dad, George. I wanted to share just a few little mementos as we start to conclude, so I can give you all an opportunity. Please ask some questions as well. But I just wanted to take some moment and share some family photos. Me and Daddy-O. Again, super thankful for that. And then just to give you a little bit of context to my mom and brothers, all of us together. One of the things too that I'm super thankful for is also my very supportive grandparents. So you can see my grandfather, he's the Caribbean, strong-minded one. He walked with Malcolm X, Tommy Hill, back in 1963. And so I've just been very thankful. And even though my parents aren't together, and even though I'm very proud of what my mom did, I'm so thankful that we all can come together for family photos. And I encourage anyone who's a child of divorce or broken homes, if you can, it's possible. At the end of the day, it's about the love of that child, even if you two aren't together anymore. I want to just give a big thank you to Mother Karina Samala, beautiful trans Filipino woman, for the award that she gave me for the work that I've done in California. I also wanted to take a moment and just highlight this incredible magazine for really centering Black trans women when it comes to living with HIV. And then lastly, my friends, I'm proud of this accomplishment, which is organizing the first Trans Pride in Long Beach, California. Long Beach is where I got my start from. I'm kind of like Snoop Dogg, Long Beach, Strong Beach. So even though the platform, my incredible Transgender and HIV healthcare advocacy platform is taken off, and I'm here speaking with you all, I never forget, how it all started, which was in that Transgender Health Program in Long Beach. But and to that end, you can see a little bit here. I'm sorry if the writing's a little bit, kind of on the other side. Hopefully you can see, but 2021 Long Beach Trans Pride Festival, Senate. And so again, these are just a few of the accomplishments that I'm proud of. I want to just wrap up and say that, and let you all know and leave you with this. It's, never let anyone make you feel less than. I have been in spaces where I've been made to feel less than because of me being a woman, me being a Black woman, me being a trans woman, me living with HIV, not just in cisgender heterosexual spaces, heteronormative spaces. It's also been queer spaces too, right? The center is a queer space, and still I was met with, even within own LGBTQ plus community. But each of those things that I've been through, being abused, being cheated on, going through a divorce, living with HIV, navigating anorexia, learning to love myself through all of these things. I want you to know that I came from Montgomery, Alabama in a trailer park, and I knew in my heart of hearts that I was determined to not let my circumstances be where my life took me. And through hard work, again, like I mentioned earlier in the beginning, time, effort, and repetition, and also with a little willpower of learning to love myself, I have not looked back. And every time someone has told me I couldn't do something or I was incapable of doing something, I proved them wrong. And I want you to know, anytime someone tells you that you are not capable of doing something, I want you to think of my story. If I can come from Montgomery, Alabama, from a teen mom with 4 brothers and a father who battled drug addiction, and be here in this beautiful city successfully for 5 years, which is not an easy thing to do for even people who are from Los Angeles, which I'm super thankful for, then you all can and will too. So thank you so much for this incredible opportunity to share my truth. You all allowed me to be vulnerable and really open up. I felt that this was an instant safe space. And I want to turn it over to you all now if you have any questions and concerns or comments that you have for me. Thank you so much. You're so sweet. Oh,
Okay, can you hear me?
yes,
Yeah.
yes.
Awesome. Okay, I'm gonna start off with the first question because I think I might have heard you say this. Did you say you were writing a book?
Yes, yes.
Tell us
I
more about that.
processed the yes. So okay, you all. So as you heard, my life has been these 34 years have been something else. And everyone's been telling me, I think you need to write this down and just let folks know, because I think a lot of times we don't realize that trans women can be successful. We don't realize that trans women can be in spaces like educational spaces speaking. So for me, my book that I'm working on is called Perfect. And the title Perfect comes from, this has been, and I kind of was hinting at the theme a little bit, like I've been told like the perfect way to behave, the perfect way to like look. Even in our trans femme spaces, like, we're kind of told like, oh, you should look this way, and all these things. And so like, what's perfect, what's imperfect, and just learning that no one is. And that's what I want the message of the book to be about, is that like, there is no one way to be your best self. Every time I thought like I had my life situated, right, from teaching, graduating, all these different things, I was kind of thrown these different curveballs. And the biggest thing for me was just learning how to adapt. You must learn how to adapt, you all, when life throws you those challenging situations, because they can get to you. And every time those situations really were hurtful and harmful for me, there was times when I wanted to give up and give in. But I want to remind people that, there's still so much more to look forward to. You never know what the next day may bring. So that is a little bit of a little synopsis into the book. There's going to be, I kind of gave y'all like a little 45-minute talking point of that, but there's going to be much more things that I didn't get to share with you all in today's incredible opening ceremony. But just wanted to, again, let you all know that will be coming, and I will get that information over to Tia and Ashley.
Take the mic.
Salutations. My name is Caleb. Thank you so much. We appreciate you and your vulnerability. My question for you is, you named right how your mother, your father, and folks in your family played a role. I was wondering who the folks that you didn't get to meet, like whether that was writers, activists, people in the media who inspired you and affirmed you in your journey throughout your time.
Thank you, Caleb. That's a really great question. So, it's interesting. I've been asked, especially one of the examples was the name Mallery. How did the name Mallery come to be? And, I didn't share this with you all, but I will, because you all are so amazing. So there was I was in 4th grade, and there was this girl, she was in the 6th grade, Black cisgender girl, and her name was, ready for this, Mallery Gay. So at this point, I was still like definitely not into my gender journey, but I can recall being on the playground, and this beautiful, like, tall girl comes over, and she's like, I see you. And don't you ever let anyone make you feel less. It's like plain and simple. Like, I was like out of nowhere, and I was kind of like taken aback, but in a good way. I was like, thank you. Like, I'm just kind of like and then when I fast forward to when I got into my journey at the age of 16, one of the next people in my life that really impacted me, not only Mallery Gay, but you all may have heard of her, is Isis King, America's Next Top Model with Tyra Banks. She was one of the first trans models back, and this would have been around circa 2006, 2007. And I remember like seeing her on national television, being vulnerable herself, and talking about being a trans woman, a Black trans woman, and being on this show. And at this point, she was what's also known in our community as preoperative. So hadn't quite undergone like some gender affirming surgeries, but still willing to like take that challenge on in a space, where she was considered like the odd girl out. And she spoke about that on Tyra Banks. And I felt that way myself, being a teenager at the time, 16, seeing her talk about this. And all of those people inspired me to be in my truth. They was seeing that episode on America's Next Top Model, which was where the first time I knew, oh, there's the term, but which is what I've been living with in my life, which is known as transgender. So it was Isis King back in 2006 on the Tyra Banks show, being vulnerable about being one of the first contestants openly as trans and saying the word transgender, where I was like, oh, this is who I am. I'm not just some, queer, gay, AMAP person. No, like there's a name to this. There's other people out here, who is going through the same thing and talking about it. And so it was just like a no brainer after that for me. It was like, yeah, if ICE can get on national television and do it, then I definitely knew that it was time for me to do it as well. So I would definitely say in terms of like role models. And then of course I have to like give kudos to like two other like incredible transcestors. One is also from my home state, Sweet Home, Alabama, Laverne Cox from Orange is the New Black. So we, she's a great sister friend and just love her. And so we have that Alabama connection. And then also for me as well, Laverne Cox, and then I had a brain freeze for a moment. And that's what happens when I kind of like get super excited. I was just thinking about my time with Laverne. So I like a little brain freeze. But all these people have just been so grateful. I've been so grateful to have them be part of my journey and impact me and encourage me. And now it came back to me, you all, because I was so excited with just talking about these beautiful folks. Marsha P. Johnson. So her work with Stonewall and leading, just the liberation for our queer and trans folks. That was one of the reasons why I'm still an activist to this day. Her case remains unsolved. She was murdered as well in 1892. And again, so many times when we think of Pride season, we think a lot of times of like and of course we love our gay boys, and we absolutely, but a lot of times again, our trans women definitely sometimes get overlooked, and we sometimes forget that Marsha P. Johnson and Sylvia Rivera, both, were very instrumental in getting this started. So those are some of my sheroes and heroes.
Any other questions? No other questions? Anyone on the chat?
All right. Well, thank you, Mallory, for that amazing speech, sharing your journey with us. I'm sure everyone really appreciates your vulnerability today. And thank you all for coming out to this event. Just got to do a quick little plug. The Hub's going to have some more events throughout Women's History Month. So next Monday, there's going to be a Women's Empowerment Bingo. I wish I had the details, but, we do have yeah, other than next Monday, I don't know the time, but we do have our calendar out. So please look at that and look at all of our other upcoming events. So yeah, have a great rest of your evening. Thank you.
Thank you all.
Thank you, Mallory.
Of course, thank you all, and I'll see y'all soon.
Yeah.
Take care.